number 5 spot today, we have the 2021 UFO. On February 21st of 2021, a blogger was using a radio scanner to try and pick up the from an aircraft when he received much more than he ever expected. He intercepted the transmission of the wrong aircraft, but at the right time. As an American Airlines flight was headed from Cincinnati to Phoenix around 1:19 p.m., the pilot came on the radio to ask the question, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over top of us." After this, he followed up with, "I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast right over the top of us." Not only were FAA air traffic controllers not able to see any object in the area on their radar scope, but they still have been unable to identify exactly what it could have been. This does happen more often than any of us really know, and it is possible that the object could have been a part of some covert military or Navy operation, but it certainly raises some alarm bells that it was unable to be tracked in any sort of capacity. I wonder if this is one of those stories that will remain a mystery, or if one day we'll get some sort of answers as to what exactly happened here. In our number 4 spot today, we have the New Jersey UFO. This UFO sighting took place in 2001, just above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, just after midnight, for around 15 minutes, motorists driving down this highway stopped to stare at the sky to witness what no one could believe. There were strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation just above the Arthur Kill waterway. There were a ton of witnesses who were all extremely confused and shocked as to what they were seeing. Air traffic controllers initially denied that there were any flying objects that could have caused the mysterious lights, but a group that is called the New York Strange Phenomena Investigators claimed that they received radar data that night that would corroborate the story that the witnesses were telling. It may not have been aliens, but it certainly was some sort of unidentified flying object that no one had ever seen before, and there were people from all walks of life witnessing it together. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the two witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange out the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. Shortly after they noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and this is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet offshore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in the investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were totally accounted for. So what could these witnesses have all seen? Since they never officially identified what it was, in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Chicago UFO. This UFO sighting comes from November 7th, 2006, and it was at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Flight 446 was getting ready to head to North Carolina when an employee from United Airlines that was on the tarmac noticed a dark gray metallic aircraft hovering over one of the gates. After this, 11 other employees and even a few people who didn't work there saw this gray saucer floating at around 4:15 p.m. The people who saw it explained that it hovered above the gate for about 5 minutes before it just shot itself upwards and broke through the clouds, leaving a hole in the clouds where you could see the blue sky through. The strangest thing, however, is that this flying saucer did not show up on the radar, so the Federal Aviation Administration just called it a weather phenomena and would not investigate it, despite there being around 15 witnesses who all saw exactly the same thing. This story did, however, become one of the most read stories on the Chicago Tribune's website, and even went international because it certainly is just very interesting. In our number 1 spot today, we have Flight 1628. Back on November 17th, 1986, Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was flying from Paris to an airport near Tokyo when they had a very strange UFO encounter. On the part of the flight where they were over Alaska around 1711, the crew witnessed 2 unidentified objects to the left of their craft. The 2 objects rose up quite quickly to meet the craft and continued to fly alongside it. Each object had 2 rectangular things that are said to have appeared to be some sort of glowing nozzles or thrusters, but the crew on the plane couldn't see much else. They weren't able to see if there was anyone or anything inside. The closer these objects came to the plane, the more light was let inside, so much so that at the closest points the plane's cabin was totally lit up, and the captain even said he could feel the heat from the lights on his face. After this, the 2 objects left, but this was not the end, because a third, much larger disc-shaped object showed up and started following the plane. In the end, the plane needed to make an emergency landing in Anchorage, Alaska, because this third craft was seriously large and incredibly frightening, and they just needed to figure out what was going on. The plane landed successfully and investigations were conducted, but to this day, no one is exactly sure what the men on board saw, but the entire crew witnessed the exact same thing.